Generally, when people think of the emotional visual novel Nakige genre, people always tend to prefer and recommend visual novels developed by Key, such as Clannad, Little Busters, and Summer Pockets. While those are definitely notable titles for good reason, I wanted to use this video to cover some emotional visual novels that I think are at least on par in quality, if not better in some ways compared to these popular Key visual novels I just mentioned. The first visual novel I want to talk about is F, A Fairy Tale of the Two, developed by Minori. Of all the titles on this list, I feel like this is the closest to feeling like a Key title. It definitely has a lot of romance melodrama with a small tinge of supernatural. However, the main thing that sticks out about the F series for me is the fact that between the two games, First Tale and Latter Tale, is that it's basically 5 linear love stories between 5 different couples, mostly around the same time period. There are very notable themes including love triangles, work motivation, disabilities, age gap romance, and other unique stuff. The fact that we essentially have 5 couples we get to learn in detail is easily one of the most unique things about F, and something I wish more romance stories actually did. While some of these couple stories are better than others, I think all of them have at least one memorable, poignant, emotional moment that makes the F series worth experiencing as a whole, whether you choose to read the original visual novels or even watch the anime adaptation, which does this unique thing of switching between the couples of stories to keep you on your toes, albeit at the cost of removing one of the stories. If you end up liking F, you could also consider checking out some of Minori's other titles like Eden, They Were Only Two on the Planet, and Trinoline. The next title I want to talk about is Irotoridori no Sekai, developed by Favorite, also commonly known as Iroseka, with the official English title being called The Colorful World. This is another title that can feel similar to Key in terms of having very dramatic and very memorable emotional moments, but Iroseka has very interesting, unique things about it. While it's no doubt an emotional Nakige at heart, it also has a surprising amount of supernatural mystery that's hinted as early as the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game. The main character, Yuma, eventually has to help the 5 main heroines with their emotional issues, and man, some of their issues can get surprisingly depressing. The route quality definitely is a bit uneven, with a few characters clearly getting much more love than the others, but I actually like the themes of every single route, covering very unique human issues, though with almost all of them having something of a supernatural twist to it. But honestly, even as early as the last few chapters of the common route, there are some surprisingly really emotional moments, even with characters that aren't the main heroines. However, there's no doubt that at least to me, the absolute standouts in terms of emotional moments has to be Kana and Shinku's routes. Without getting into spoilers, Kana has way more depth than you expect from a goofy, energetic girl wearing a maid outfit, and Shinku, all I can say is this girl has gone through way more than someone her age should have. If you want more of my personal thoughts on this title, I have a separate review video on it on this channel. The next title I want to talk about is Amatsutsumi, developed by Purplesoft. While there is a little bit of supernatural similar to the last few titles I talked about, that aspect is mostly limited to a few characters. Most specifically, the main character Makoto has the power of the Kotodama, more specifically the ability to manipulate people's actions and memories through his words. While Makoto starts off as a pretty obviously socially stunted man that just uses his pretty overpowered ability recklessly, as he attempts to help the main girls with their problems, he starts to gain some humanity and limits how much he uses this Kotodama power of his. This aspect of the plot is great, but to me, what's most important of all is all 4 main heroines have really interesting emotional drama going on. Without getting into detail about who goes through what, there will be issues about family guilt, friendship, and the will to live. All these themes, at least to me, are done excellently at some point in the main story. One of the biggest advantages of Amatsutsumi compared to other emotional route-based visual novels like Iroseka is its use of the ladder route system. To get on the true route, the main character has to canonically help each heroine with their emotional problems, making the heroines' permanent development all in one story excellent, and something I wish more visual novels did. As long as you can get over the admittedly overabundance of H scenes, even in the common route, I think Amatsutsumi is one of my personal favorite emotional stories in visual novels. I have a few reviews of the title on my channel if you want to hear more detailed thoughts. The next visual novel I want to talk about is Cyanotype Daydream, developed by Laplacian. Similar to F, this is a visual novel that has a very unique structure where there are 4 different main linear love stories, each revolving around separate couples eventually getting together. These couples have very different and unique circumstances, with one of the protagonists being William Shakespeare of all people. Unlike F, where all the different characters are clearly different people that just happen to may or may not know each other, the different couples in Cyanotype Daydream are way different people from way different time periods, yet somehow have something of a connection that you'll get to understand by the last route, Case 0, generally considered the highlight of the visual novel, and the case that is by far the longest. I like to call all 4 of these stories very interesting tragedies. Every male protagonist and main heroine respectively all have very interesting and relatable depth and development, and the most emotional parts of these stories comes to how the main character and the main heroine's lives affect each other for better or for worse. As long as you can get over the fact that 2 of the stories involve teacher-student romance, with one story having roughly a 5 to 10 year age gap and the other having a 30-year age gap, I think Cyanotype Daydream is a solid, deep, emotional title that, while the first 3 cases have surprisingly decently fast pacing, the true route, Case 0, is much longer and slower paced, which does make sense for the story it's trying to tell, though I think perhaps relies a bit too much on exposition and monologues. But thankfully, all 4 stories tie together very well, especially once you finish Case 0. On a quick final note, Cyanotype Daydream does this really interesting thing where they take backgrounds and music from 3 of Laplacian's previous titles: Kimi to Yumamishi, Newton and the Apple Tree, Future Radio, and the Artificial Pigeons. You do not need to read these titles beforehand, as Cyanotype uses completely new characters and stories, but they are still cool minor callbacks if you want to read them first. The last title I want to talk about is what I consider one of the most criminally underread visual novels ever, Symphonic Rain. Unlike the other titles on this list that were originally 18+ eroge when they first released, Symphonic Rain was always all ages, and I think that gets a boost through that. While Symphonic Rain is definitely very emotional, it doesn't always go off the expected Nakige path of just trying to make things as depressingly sad as possible. When I think of Symphonic Rain's emotional strengths, I think poignant and varied describes Symphonic Rain's themes very well. Despite its art style, Symphonic Rain has little to no of the typical Japanese comedy tropes, with the characters feeling more like real people despite how they look. This is partially because Symphonic Rain is a game around where the setting is about graduating from a music school. I think it's quite fitting that all the main heroines get to sing, and all their theme songs have lyrics that purely relate to the development of their route. You may not see it when you first hear the song and you don't really know much about them, but once you experience their drama and reread their song lyrics, you can really tell how much the writer thought out each character, drama, and their depth. The emotional drama you'll experience is quite fascinating, as it has some incredible, unexpected, hard-hitting plot twists that might give you different emotions. All of these twists affect the main character, Chris, in many different ways, depending on which route you go on. The emotions you feel will differ depending on the route. Some you'll feel sadness, some you'll feel anger, some you'll feel confusion, some you'll feel depressed, and some may even a little happy. Finding out more about Chris, the main heroines, and their relationships to each other make for some of the most memorable emotional moments in visual novels for me, which is why Symphonic Rain is one of my personal favorite Nakige visual novels. Alright, and that's the list. 5 emotional Nakige visual novels that aren't developed by Key that I personally recommend. I've technically been throwing some light shade at Key, but I actually tend to like their stories, albeit mostly in anime form. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the titles that I've chosen, whether you've already read them or decide to read them after this video, as well as any other emotional titles you think I may have missed.